Hey Shy, how are you?
What's poppin', Val?
How you doing?
Chillin', chillin'. What's good with you? How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad I'm home. I'm so happy to be home. It was a long 20 months for me, but I could tell you one thing, prison like definitely humbled me. And I think that anyone that has been away, of course, I was only away 20 months. Like you can't compare that to Jay doing 14 years, right? But like just being away and having to like live out of a locker and having everything in a locker that you possibly can own when it comes to your food, your hygiene, your clothes, like everything fitting in one locker. I think I came home and it definitely changed me. It definitely humbled me. And
But you've been there before. What was the difference?
I think that it was very different with me just going away the first time. I was in my 20s, so I think I was more about it, ride or die. But like as you get older, it's like, and you have a family, you have
Mm-hmm.
children, and it's like all that changes, especially when you feel like you're not there, and you want nothing more than to just be with your family. And I think that I went in there and, it was difficult just to be away from my family. And I know a lot of women are able to do their time because they don't have anybody in their life, right? So it's like easier to get through the time and not have to worry about, just feeling that emptiness of not being home with your kids, right? Or your husband. But like being away and like having that and then be that taken away from you, I think that was probably the hardest part for me. So I think when I first went away, I was like, yeah, I could do 5 years on my head, right? Like I could do this, like I'm about that life. And all of a sudden, I think it was the first week I
You like,
called Jay crying.
fuck this.
I was crying. I was like a little bitch, like, oh my God, I want to go home. I can't do this shit no more. Like, I just want to go home. I can't do no time. Like, I could not take it. And it took a long time for me to like acclimate to prison life, right? And it took a long time for me to just be able to to get strong again. And I had to do it because, you can't depend on nobody in there but yourself, right? So, I think that was just like really like hard for me to, have to, transition into like, okay, this is what I'm about to do. And I just have to be, mentally strong for this. And I can't be a little bitch about it, right? But it took me a minute. And I think that, being in there, like, I felt like I reverted, right? Like back to like my old ways of like trying to live up to my reputation and who I was, right? Like I got into a prison fight and like I went, and they took away, my phone, they took away my commissary, they took away my good time. It's like they took away all my shit and it's like I was at the point where it's like I didn't care, like no one's going to show out on me. And I feel like I had to prove myself and like this is who I am and I'm about that life and it's like
Right. She was like, "Yeah, I got a hold of the TV remote. I want to watch HGTV," and then she crying because she in the shoe. Like, you should have thought about that
You did tell us,
before
you
you
did
did
tell
it.
us, if y'all remember, Val came in here and said, Shy, I let you know when I'm running the TV room. She went after that motherfucker.
I went after it, got my good days taken away.
What was your favorite what was your favorite HGTV show up to that point?
Are you kidding me? Christina on the coast.
See, whatever the fuck that is.
Listen, I got my good days taken away.
Damn.
I got my commissary taken away. I got my email taken away, my visits, my everything. When all that shit's taken away from you and I can't call my kids, I can't email my kids, I can't see my kids, I can't eat. It's like I'm going to sleep starving, my stomach growling, I'm going to sleep crying. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I here? And I felt like, you know what? Like, I was like really like upset and mad. Like, I went to prison and I'm like, I didn't deserve to be here. Like, I had this like sense of entitlement because I felt like, Jay cooperated against Chapo. Like, I should have a free pass, right? And it's like having that like entitlement and like thinking like I'm above the law or like the rules don't apply to me. I felt like, it like like I was very bitter and mad and upset that I even had to go to prison. I felt like I should have just gotten a free pass, right? And it's like that wasn't the case, that wasn't the issue. Same thing like with Chapo's wife with Emma, like she had to do, she of course she got a sweeter deal than we got, but she cooperated, we didn't. And it's like, so I felt like, you know what, like it's this is what it is. I have to like take ownership. I have to take accountability. And obviously, like God, sat me down for a reason. He sat my ass down to like for something, and I did not know what that was. And it took me a minute to like sit down and try to figure out like what that was, like why this was like, this obviously was his plan for me, right? That I had to go to prison at such a like later time in my life. And I kind of like didn't understand it, and of course I was bitter, but I felt like it's what I had to do. And I felt like being there, like after a minute of course, me getting everything taken away from me, I felt like, you know what, this is, I'm here for a reason. I just need to figure this shit out, right? And there's something obviously that God needs me to learn. And I don't know what that is, but I need to like figure what it is. And I took this like program, I took RDAB, right? And so it's like a cognitive behavioral therapy program, and it basically like you sit there and you reflect on your life. And I think that because I was living such a fast life, and like I was always like addicted to the lifestyle and just chasing fast money, fast cars, like all that, right? It's like it took me a minute, like I never had the chance to sit down and really like reflect on like, okay, why did I make certain choices in my life? Like what drove those decisions? Like what, like why, like how did I end up here in prison for the third time? I mean, come on, I went to prison in Mexico, and then I went to prison in my 20s, and now I'm back in prison again. It's like, what drives me to keep making the same, like, decisions, and keep making these, obviously like tripping over the same rock? Like, what is doing this? And I felt like, this program, I felt like I was there because that's where I needed to be. And it taught me so much about myself. It made me go back to my childhood. It made me go back into like why I made these decisions. Shy, I grew up and I came from a good home. Like I come from a family of law enforcement. Like it's not like I came from a broken home, or I came from, my dad, my mom, they weren't like addicts. Like I didn't have to live that life. I chose that life. And so I had to sit there and like try to understand like what was it that drove me to like certain relationships, and like why I chose to be with certain men, and why I chose to be in toxic relationships that were unhealthy, that were not good for me, and go through, abuse and like all these things that I went through. And it's like it like made me go through so much. And I think like in our culture, we don't talk about trauma. We don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about any of that. And I feel like it's so important to like, to like bring awareness to like to our people, to our community, right? And I feel like those are things that we don't speak about. And like I've been like talking to Jay, like, damn, I think it's important, like to, I don't know what, God has in store for me, right? I don't know what, I'm trying to still figure out like what I want to do, but I feel like I'm not sure if I want to go like and do a podcast or what I want to do. But I feel like it's important like to educate our community and to bring awareness to our people, because we don't talk about like that for some reason. And especially coming from like, our Latino background, it's like we don't talk about certain things.
I think we're too busy. For instance, like even right now with Mencho's wife,
Uh-huh.
she can't be a wife. I mean, whatever she was as a wife, because it was like being on the run. People can understand what that entails, right? Your wife is just a title because at the end, he has a bunch of other girls. That's why he got caught. But uh, for journalists and for the media and people are automatically, oh, she's gonna take over the business, and you forget the human element. Her being a woman who went away, who lost a
Yeah,
lot
but I
on the other
think that
side.
even like, okay, for instance, like when I was married to Jay, right? I think that even when I was married to him, and like we were married for so long, and when he went away, it's like you think in your head like I'm gonna be able to fill his shoes, right? And that's so not the case. But just being in like you're almost consumed in that lifestyle, right? Even when I was married to Kay, like when Kato passed away, like, to be honest with you, I almost tried to fill his shoes, and I thought like I was really about that life and people should respect me just because I was married to him. And it's like Jay took the time to be like, Val, it's not, people, yeah, they respected him, but more than anything, they feared him. And there's a difference between respect and fear. And now that he's gone, they're not going to respect you. Like, that shit's out the window. And it took me a long time to even understand that, or even try to like wrap my head around that, because I was so consumed in being his wife. And I'm sitting on top of the world and I'm his queen and everybody needs to bow down to me. And that was so not the case. Like, it's like sometimes we could have this like grandiosity where we think that that's what it is, and it's really not. Like, it's almost an illusion, right? But even like when Kay passed away, I felt like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, jump into the music industry. And yeah, I was successful. And yeah, I was able to get a record deal through Universal and get this huge, like, $1 million deal that people don't get. But that's because I had Jay to back me up. But you start thinking in your head, like, you're you're this person and you want to almost like live up to this reputation. And to me, it's like all facade. And I think that like going through that program and doing that, that CBT program, it really like slowed me down and slowed down my thinking. And it taught me to like be rational about my thoughts and not get into like, not let my emotions drive, my actions, right? And so I feel like it just taught me so much. And it kind of like, it just, like I said, Chai, it just humbled the shit out of
Chai's
me.
been working on
Let
his
me
emotions
ask
And,
you,
too.
mhm.
did getting to the bottom of it, the urge, the rush of the life that you had at such an early age, and you like you said, you come from a family of law enforcement. You ain't had like an uncle or a great uncle or a grandfather or some shit that was on some gangster shit that had just as much love for the rush? Did you ever, have you ever, did you ever see that lifestyle, or was it just you went and sought it out? Do you remember a pinpoint where you saw something and you said, "Oh shit, that's for me over there"?
Okay, so I have an uncle, right? My uncle Fish, right? He's an OG. He was like an original Latin king. He actually started it with Big Cato, which is Cato's father. So they
The
started the original Latin kings from the
from
boulevard.
the boulevard.
And my uncle Fish was, he was like an Inca, right? At the time. And so like growing up, I go stay with my cousin, and like he would have like on his wall portraits of like an Inca with a shield and an LK on his shield. And like he was like, to me, like back then, that's when Scarface came out. And I'd see him, like he'd have like a pile of cocaine and just like putting his nose in it. Like he was the real fucking deal. And so like that stuck with me because I was very close to him and he called me his Minnie Mouse. And he ended up going to prison and he would write to me, like we were so close, right? And I'll tell you a crazy story is that like when he passed away, I want to say a few years back. And when he passed away, which is so ironic, Big Cato, which is Cato's father, Rudy, Big Cato and Cato's mom, which is Mary, they were there at his bedside when he passed away. So that's how close they were. And so, like, to me, that, my uncle, I would look up to him, and he was very different. He was married to my aunt, and he was very different from everybody, around me. And that drew me. Like, I was so close to him. Like, I constantly wanted to be, with my cousin and be with him
Gangster.
because, he was about that life. And so I think that was probably my first interaction of seeing something like that. And like I said, I think to me, like you become a product of your environment, right? Because even though as much as my parents wanted to shield me and protect me and they were strict and they didn't want me, around, you know, um, around like different like gangsters and thing gangbangers around my neighborhood, because where I grew up in Pilsen, right? So it's very drug infested, gang infested. But even though it's like I ended up going to Juarez, and when I was in high school, it's like everybody there, that's all you saw, right? Like Juarez and Farragut was probably like the worst high schools in the whole in the whole city. And so that's where I went to school at. And back then it's like, you had CPD, patrolling the high school because it was so gang infested, so drug infested. And so like everybody around me was in that life. And that's what that's what I was drawn to. That's what I was attracted to, fast money, fast cars, fast everything. And that's how I started like running drugs back and forth to LA. That's how I became a mule and started going to Mexico. That's how, I started my own DTO, my own drug trafficking organization, just because, I was so consumed in like, getting money, and I wanted to be so different from everybody else that I felt like, okay, I'm a shot caller on my own. I don't need, a man to be, you know, tied down to somebody to do it. I could do it on my own. And I was like super independent, and I wanted to like get money on my own, and I wanted that respect at a very early age. And so that's how I think I got drawn into that life.
Yeah, there's a bunch of young ladies that your story is important for because they're feeling the same way. They got to keep up with the Joneses. They're getting picked up from freshman year by this dude that graduated already, and they're rolling around in this life, and he's a super badass. And then there comes that moment where he gets pinned in at a red light, and six motherfuckers jump out with hammers, and it's that terror moment, that breath of, oh shit, I'm in deeper than I should have been. Those little girls need to hear that story. They need to hear, because let me tell you something. Sometimes that susto, that scare, is not
Hmm.
enough. You
It's
had a
not.
lot of scares.
I had a lot of scares, but you know what I think though, even like being married to Kato, right? And like him, like he was about it. He was about that life every day, all day. Like that was no act whatsoever. There was no facade there. Like he was like that person, right? And I don't think there was anyone scarier than him that I've ever been around. And there was times when I was around him, and like, he'd see somebody, and it's like he just pop off in a second, where he'll like just right over me, just start airing somebody out. And where my I couldn't even hear out of my left ear, just because ringing in my ear was shots fired, right? And like broad daylight, like he didn't give a fuck. And I think that even then it didn't scare me. So to me, when I went through this program and I started trying to understand, like, what is it? Like, how did I not, like, how did I not react? How did I think that that was normal? Like, how did that become my normalcy, right? Like, what happened to the point where I became so numb to this lifestyle that all of a sudden I just started thinking that that was okay. And I think that, just going back and just digging deep and trying to understand like what drove these decisions and what drove these choices, and why, what got me here to this situation, what got me here to today. I think that right there, it's like it goes way deeper than that, right? And so you don't talk about trauma, you don't talk about abuse, you don't talk about shit you've been through. And I think it's important. And when I talk about like awareness, and I talk about like how it's important to educate our community about mental health and things like that, I think that shit is so real, Shy, that a lot of women don't understand. Like, these are deeper, this lies deeper, there's deeper issues than what lies on the surface, right? And I think that's important, and that's why I feel like I'm super like bold, I'm super vulnerable, I'm super able to like share my story, and not and be vulnerable and not be embarrassed of what I've been through, just to be able to educate other people, so that way they don't have to go through the same shit that I went through, or have to go through all the hardships and all the struggles and all the like, all the suffering that I've been through, right?
How does it feel being home with the babies?
Oh my God, it feels so good. First of all, they're grown. So I missed out on a lot, right? I missed out on graduations. I missed out on birthdays. I missed out on so much. I missed out on proms. And so now my kids are grown, right? But it's like, I'm just happy to be home. It's very different to like have to like relearn how to, you know, be a mom. When I say relearn, I mean I had to back up, because, being I guess being in that lifestyle, right? You're very me, I became very like controlling, and things are my way all day, every day. And then I come home, and it's like I have to, relearn that my kids are independent, they're grown, they're older now, and I have to be able to just back off and like be able to, yeah. And not only that, just show them that respect, like, you know what, you got this, you know what I mean? I think building, confidence in kids and young adults is so important. And growing up like we did, it's like, you do as you told, you just because I said so, right? And it's like now, it's like, no, you have to respect your children, you have to treat them like young adults, and you have to be able to let them make their own decisions. and just be able to guide them, because I think it's important, because we can't, we have to build these children up, because at the end of the day they're going to have to stand alone, and they're going to have to stand on their own, and they're going to have to make the right choices when you're not there, and I think that's important, right? So, yeah, so I'm trying to like, it's weird though, because Jay's done such a good job with my kids, and I come home and I see this independence, and I see like they're already like, older now, they're young men, and I'm like, whoa, like, wait, where was I, right? So it was difficult though, especially like being away, and
Learning.
having to relearn this. And I think that when I was away, and it was very different when Jay was gone, right? Because we were there at the visits every weekend. He saw my kids grow up, and because where I was, and because of my situation, I didn't want people to know who I was. I was in prison. I didn't want nobody to know that, okay, I'm Val, that I'm a cartel wife. I was married to Jay. Like, I didn't want people to know that. So like, I kept my kids and my family at a distance, so I didn't really get to see them like I wish I would have. But I did it for my security. I did it for their security, and I wanted to make sure, like, it didn't affect us the way we did. Because don't forget, my kids grew up in a visiting room, right? And I'm like, I didn't want to put them through that again. Like, they went through that for already all them years, for 12 years. Like, I'm not going to sit there.
They've definitely had enough of y'all shit. Y'all sit
Yeah,
y'all ass down.
definitely.
You know
Sit
what?
y'all ass down somewhere. They've
Definitely.
had enough.
I'm gonna say
Definitely, but it
something.
was really hard just seeing my kids. Like, I was gone to 20 months. I was only able to see them a handful of times. So I think that part hurt the most, right? But
I,
at the end of the day, I came home and I felt like Jay did an amazing job with my kids. He's a good father. He's an amazing father. And I think my kids benefited because they definitely found their independence.
yeah, I think I want to say something. Hey, Shai, you hear all these comments, and I get it everywhere. People reach out to me, and they don't understand, like the shit that we did back then. We're still living through this, right? Even now with probation and all the stuff that we go through. So it's easier said. It's easier for someone to drop a comment or reach out and say something stupid about us not knowing that life or not understanding it. It's like, look, I was going through this life, even myself in the prison room, in a prison room, and then having to go through the stuff where my wife had to go away and our kids and stuff, and even to we still go through it to today, right? It's like we still get probation visits, right? Probation officers and stuff like that after so many years, and it's something that we're still living through.
Cartel Wives is better than surviving El Chapo. That's it. That's just
Really?
that's the consensus.
Really?
No, it's
I'm
good
gonna tell
though.
you one thing. I feel like with Cartel
We're
Wives,
not producers.
I'll tell you what Cartel Wives, right? I think it was a completely different spin. It was me and Vivi telling our story from what we went through growing up, and then what happened in our lives, and everything, how us meeting J and P, and us going through everything we went through, getting thrown into that narco culture, living in Mexico, having to turn around, and our husbands cooperating with the government, and then us turning around and then having to come back to the US with our babies, and having to just go through all the shit that we went through. Like, that was like a roller coaster ride, right? It was like a page turner, because we were just spitting it raw. We were spitting out their business. We were telling how their infrastructure worked. We were talking about their logistics. We were talking about the drug trade. We were talking about Chapo. I mean, we put so much into that book, right? And then on top of that, it was the family dynamic of it all, right? What was important to us, what it was about, just our family, the sisterhood that we had, and just us, even me and Viv. Like, me and Viv were very different. Viv was very passive and very quiet, and she was very insulated at the time, where she came from a family where she probably wasn't in that life, or even though we had similar backgrounds and we both came from families of law enforcement, I chose to be around the gangsters and the drug dealers, and I chose to be around that life, and it was very different, the way the way, the life that we chose up until the time we got with JMP. When we were both with JMP and we moved to Mexico when they were fugitives, and we sat there and we were thrown into that narco culture, it's like her and I were living that together. And I felt like a sisterhood was built between the two of us, to the point where we went through all these experiences with Jay and Peter, and them being, working, you know, sitting at the upper echelon, sitting at the table with Chapo and Mayo, and them sitting there and being at the highest level, right? And us experiencing that, and us living that, and us seeing that every day where we are around these people. And I think that, you know, us having each other, and then us sitting there when JMP, when they finally decided to cooperate, us having to live through that, and us having to be there and support one another and get through it together. And then when JMP had to turn themselves in for me and Viv to sit there, and for us to, like, we were left in Mexico. Like, we were left out there like high and dry when JMP turned themselves in, and me and Viv had to find our way back to the US safely and bring our babies back home safely without us getting killed. Like, and we only had each other. And when we came back, it's like we had to like survive that and get through it. And it took everything in us to get back to the border and to get through, you know, what we went through, especially when you're dealing with like all the border cities, because they're like cartel infested. We're going into enemy territory right there. And it's like we had to get back safely. And it's like I felt like with Viv and I, it was very different because like she became stronger. She became more outspoken. She became more, I felt like, she became very, like, she bossed up. You know
She
what I mean?
became what she had to be given the circumstance.
And then for me, it was very different where I became more, more calm. I became more understanding. I became more empathetic. I started picking up a lot on her to the point where we became a lot like more like one and the same, right? And like, then we turned around and we came back and we had to be there for each other. And then look what happened. We were there for our husbands. We were going through the same thing, visiting them every single weekend for 12 plus years with our children, raising our babies. And then at that point, it's like both of us turn around and we have to go to prison, and we catch a case together. We go to prison. So we're going through all these things together. And then all of a sudden, it's like with Surviving El Chapo, we do the podcast. It was very different because we sat there and we talked about what those experiences felt like. We had to sit there, like, you most of the time I think I was in tears crying about something and really like pouring out my soul and being able to calm myself and being able to relive those moments. And I think that part was so much more vulnerable than me being vulnerable in my book, because I had to sit there and I had to sit with it and sit with my feelings and sit with my emotions and try to relive those experiences of what that actually felt like. So you can see in the podcast how I'm like, we're all very calm. We're all very like mellow. We're just telling the story and we're giving you more of that experience. So that way the listener could kind of go through what we were going through as far as our emotions, as far as our thoughts, what we were feeling. I think all that is more powerful. I think the book, I like Cartel Wives, that's my baby, but it's rush, 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 rush. You feel that adrenaline, right? But when you're listening to the podcast, it's like mellow. It's like a whole
No, they
totally different
definitely
tone.
complement each other. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're getting more of the like feeling wise of what we went through. You're getting more of the experience, and I feel like you're almost living it with us. I think that's what makes a difference. And I love, like, me surviving El Chapo. I feel like that hits home because it's just so real. It's so authentic, and we're really being transparent and vulnerable in those moments to where you could kind of, maybe you might not understand, like, okay, why we made certain choices in our life, but you can definitely like relate and be like, damn, I get it now. I see the family dynamic. I see everything they had to go through. I see the struggle. I see the suffering. I see the sacrifice. I see why they made certain choices and how they were able to overcome all that and come out of that and be even better. Like, I get that now, I think that's what
You make a
makes the
good point.
difference.
I just figured it out.
Go ahead, motherfucker.
That the book, it just says what she says, fast paced. It's like you're not getting our, what we were feeling and your insight. In Surviving Trouble, you're getting our insight.
Mm-hmm.
Now if we were to write a book, about just the highs and just break the lows. You simple the way it was Cartel West. We'd probably have a bestseller because that's the shit people
Bestseller.
want to hear.
Let me say something about the dynamic of the family. You guys have a unique dynamic, the four of you, in the sense that I don't believe nobody can relate to Pete and nobody can relate to Jay more than each other, and I feel the same way about Val and Vivi because of the parallel paths that the four of y'all have gone on. You know what I'm saying? No, nobody can have a. There's no support group that can have a conversation with you about your experience, Val, except for that other person, which is Viv. You know what I'm saying? Because she was there and lived that shit herself. You know what I mean?
When I was in prison, I was around a bunch of women, right? There was a lot of women that were in the game, a lot of women that were in there for a drug conspiracy. There was women in there that, I'm not saying they were just like me, but like there was women in there that were very educated, very well spoken, very very relatable, and they were in the game, and they were actually getting money. You know what I'm saying? And I felt like a lot of the experiences that I went through, like I can definitely relate to them. But at the same time, it was very different from having, like you said, me and Viv having this sisterhood and having these, shared experiences of things that we went through. I can never have those conversations with somebody else, even with women that were in the game that were getting money, because it was very different from what me and Vivi went through. We went through a lot of survival. We went through a lot of shit that we didn't even think we were going to make it out of. Even the time when I was talking about when we met Mencho and we were sitting there tied up together, not knowing if we were going to get killed that night, and us being, thrown into a suburban and being tied up, like we had no idea what was to come. We having an AK-47 to your head and being thrown on the floor and being going through those traumatic experiences are something that you in Mexico, you something you can't like even fathom of how you can get through something like that. And me and Viv, like we went through so much together. And then when J and P were gone, it's like they were our rocks. They were gone at that point, and all we had was each other. All we had was to rely on one another. And I think that, made such a huge difference to have that person in my life, because I don't think I could have got through all them 12 years, even seeing Jay every weekend. Like, you need that support system, and nobody else. We couldn't share our story because it's like we had to hide that. We had to hide, we can't. I didn't have friends. I couldn't call people. I couldn't tell them what I've been through because I'm over here hiding. Because, like I told you, I'm living in this paranoia and, fear. Like I said, fear is a curse where you're just like living in in this like bubble where you don't want to be exposed. You don't want to know anyone to know who you are. You're flying under the radar. And that to me, like, was a crazy way to live. When you're driving, every time you leave your house, you're looking through your rear view mirror. Like, that's no way to live, because I felt like I was imprisoned in my own head. You know what I'm saying? So, and the only person that can relate to that was Viv. And I felt like it took a lot for us to be there for each other, to support each other, that this is why we were able to get through what we got through. You know what I mean? Let me tell you the craziest story, right? Okay, so when I went to prison, okay, I didn't want anyone to know like who I was. I went to prison, I was flying under the radar. I never talked about my life. I didn't put up pictures of my family. I didn't put pictures up of myself. Like, everyone was talking about, in prison, you could be whoever you want to be. Everybody was in the cartel, everybody was getting money.
Right.
Everybody was slanging keys all over. You got your DC girls, you got your Detroit girls, you got, like your people from Puerto Rico. Everybody's doing it big, right? Everyone's in the cartel, everyone's a plug. I'm in there and I'm quiet about my shit. And everyone's like, hey, Val, like, they trying to like ask me questions. I'm being real, vague about
Vague, right.
everything, right? So, anyway, so I walk into my room, right? Into my cell, and my bunkie, right? My bunkie's laying on her bed, and I'm on the top bunk. She's on the bottom bunk, right? So I walk into my cell, and all of a sudden I see my bunkie, and she's laying there. She's reading Cartel Wives.
Oh shit.
I swear to God, on my kid's side, do you know my face turned white as a ghost? And she looks at me. She's like, Bunky, what's wrong? And I'm like, what? And then she was like, wait, you don't know who, wait. She was like, I was like, no, I'm good. She was like, oh, she's like, man, Bunky, I'm reading this book. They from Chi Town. Like, did you know these people? And I was like, who? She was like, the Flores twins, woo woo this. And I was like, nah, I was like, I heard of them, but I don't know them like that. But when I'm telling you, Shy, my face was white as a ghost. Like, you
Blood
have
pressure
no
dropped.
idea. Yeah, you have no idea.
And that was it. It never. She never kept pulling the thread. It never got close. Bien pendeja. She didn't know you was right there.
Nah, but after that, like I guess Viv, the people go back and forth from prison to prison, right? And I guess by Viv, they had found out who she was. And so she was kind of like worried about it, right? She was worried about like, damn, like, they're gonna find out who I was. By the time they did find out who she was, they were like treating her like a celebrity. Like they were like, yo, oh shit, that's the cartel wife. They were looking at her like from a whole different lens, right? So when the girls came by me, I guess one of the girls transferred because they go from prison to prison. One of them, they were camp status because Viv was in an FCI. They turned around and the girl came, became camp status. She came by me. So she was like, hey, that's old girl. She's a cartel wife. Who this? Yeah, she's from Chicago, blah, blah, blah.
About you, or she
And
was talking
so
about Vivi?
about me,
Oh shit.
she already knew. So I was like, damn. So at first, so then after that, everything changed, right? But it's still, I was already on my way out the door. But it was all good. Like
Did it
they
change for the
trust me.
worse, or did it change?
No, it changed for the best. Are you
Oh,
kidding me? They
oh.
become fans. You
Everybody,
know how it is.
they sat their ass down, huh?
Yeah,
Old girl
you
that
know
was in
how.
the your bunkie was in there like, fuck. How didn't I see it?
I think Val
No,
said that she like, no, I know that she didn't know it was me because she came
she
up with
was.
superhero stories herself.
Let me tell you, she was talking about she had her own infrastructure, she had her own routes, she was coming up from past the what's the tunnel you had over there in Calexico. She was saying big shit. I was like,
Yeah,
let me
yeah.
tell you, she was big shit. She was saying she was in the Sinaloa
Every
cartel.
how
She
many
got
pounds?
shot in the chest with an AK. She was big stories. I was
Everywhere.
sitting there like shaking my head,
She
like,
was
oh
eating. You were
my
eating the
god.
Cheetos. You were eating Cheetos listening to her. Let me ask you a question. How much did you say she was moving?
She was moving meth. I don't know how many
She
kilos.
was bigger than you, Jay. That's it, dog.
Coming into my own cell, Shy, and seeing my Bucky laying there reading the book with the whole, like, I seen the whole front cover, back cover, my heart dropped. Like I saw a ghost. One of the things that me and Jay talked about, right? Because there's a lot of guys, there was a lot of men in there, like their wives or their significant other, left them, right, while they were in prison. And I think that the main reason why me and Viv stayed was because that like J and Pete were like they were great husbands, they were great fathers, like they put us on pedestals, they treated us like queens. Like there's a difference. Like if I was in an abusive relationship, I would have ran too. If I'm in an unhealthy toxic relationship, like who wants that? Like I'm gonna be the first to leave, you know what I mean? So but I think that like Jay said, he put in the work. Like he was they were good to us, before they went away. The whole time they were with us, the whole time they were married to us when we lived in Mexico. Like we didn't have to worry about them stepping out. That we didn't have to like they were like, man, it was unheard of to have that type of power, to have that type of, be at that status and not be able to abuse that power. Like the same thing when it comes to like them being like womanizers, them being abusive, like they didn't do none of that shit. And the same thing like when it comes to like they say, oh, okay, well, they can't be at that level, they can't have that much power and not have the same thing when it comes to violence. Like it runs parallel. Like it's the same in one, right? Like, oh well, they can't be that person without, being violent. And no, they weren't. It's nothing in their case whatsoever when it comes to violence. So it's like they didn't fit that stigma, they didn't fit that stereotype, right? And I think that's what set them apart from the rest. That's why you hear Jay saying, like, okay, I could still talk to my guys that I cooperated on and they still have love. Like that's unheard of, right? And I just think that they're very different of what you would expect like them to be, especially at that level.